Hello, and welcome to this episode of Smith's Got Talent, a podcast featuring students, faculty, and alumni of the University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business, discussing how they've helped solve actual business challenges and leveraged AI and other tools to bring innovative ideas to the market. I'm Kim DeGrosse, the Assistant Dean and Head of the Office of Career Services, the host of our program. In this episode, we will feature the Dingman-Lamone Center for Entrepreneurship at the Robert H. Smith School of Business. The center is led by Mike Hoffmeyer, the managing director. We are joined by one of his success stories, Anthony Kang, the co-founder of Quello, an emotional AI companion. Boy, I can't wait to hear about this. Sounds really exciting. So welcome to both of you, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
You bet.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Mike, can you tell our audience a little bit about what is the Dingman-Lamone Center for Entrepreneurship? It sounds like a lot.
It's not a lot. I mean, the Dingman-Lamone Center for Entrepreneurship has been around the university for 40 years. It was started and founded by Rudy Lamone, the dean of the business school at that point. He had a vision before entrepreneurship was cool on campus, and he had a vision for how do we support entrepreneurship, make this something that is, empowers students, empowers the community around entrepreneurship. And he sold this vision to Michael Dingman and got a major gift and was able to, deliver on that gift to get a follow-on and create and make this vision a reality because he was so passionate about it. And so, 40 years later, here we are, one of the most notable entrepreneurship centers in the country. So much so that when I founded the Entrepreneurship Center at the University of Memphis, the Dingman, at that time was the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship, I actually modeled our center after this one, just because it was so impressive in terms of what they had accomplished.
Well, we're sure glad you're here with us now. That's awesome. Now, we have with us Anthony today. Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm currently a sophomore in finance and accounting here at the Smith Business School. And I've been trying to pursue entrepreneurship since, I believe, end of middle school, beginning of high school. That was like COVID, so it was very foggy. I can't really remember the time, but I started off with online stores, trying to post little small videos, making a brand. I sold a bunch of different products from a pet comb brush to air purifiers, neck fans and whatnot. So entrepreneurship has always been something in mind for me. And I realized, Smith Business School has so many resources here. And it's such a great school from what I've heard, especially from my peers, and how much it supports entrepreneurship. So yeah.
Tell us, how did you find the Dingman-Lamone Center?
I actually found the Dingman-Lamone Center before I came to Smith and being a student here. So between my freshman year fall semester, I had a gap semester due to some miscommunication with my counselors and stuff like that. So that semester, I went to a local community college. I did a lot of tried really hard there, tried to get into Smith. But during that time, I would come to UMD approximately 3-4 times a week almost. And I would bring a minivan full of goodies and merchandise here with a big cart. And I drag it around campus, setting up pop-up stores for a couple of hours here and there, trying to get our brand out. And ultimately it worked. A lot of professors actually recognized me, and a lot of other people, not just in Smith, but all around UMD campus, they saw you hey, aren't you the guy who sold the little plushie dogs? So yeah, it was definitely a great experience. There were many downsides, especially during the winter. It would be super cold, super windy. We'll have our stuffed animals set up on a table and the wind would just blow it off the right next second.
So tell us a little bit about this. You started in middle school. Sounds like there was some really interesting side hustles. And so you have obviously this entrepreneurial mindset and the spirit of entrepreneurship already embedded in you. How did you make a transition from that? And we'll hear about your startup here in a moment because it's not a side hustle. It's actually a really interesting story. But tell us how over time that mindset shifted, and I'm curious to understand, and for the audience to understand exactly how you've made that transition over time.
from middle school to now, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of learning curves and things that I did have to struggle over. But from the beginning, my mindset going into entrepreneurship, I thought, it would be fun making a business, selling your things, and making money as well. And you don't have to work. So, like, you work for yourself, you work when you want, and how you want. But I was really wrong. I realized that after starting my first, 2 or 3 online stores, I actually put more time into this than I did in school, and a lot more time than I did in the school. And it didn't work for, the first 3 tries. So it was definitely a lot of learning curve. As for my time in high school, I kind of took a break from entrepreneurship, and I focused a lot on studying and grades, because that's when grades really matter for college, especially. But I remember in the end of junior year of my high school, I went to a milk tea place for a summer job, and ended up staying there for 2 years. But that's besides the point. But during that experience, I met one of my co-founders. His name is Gu. Yeah, and he was also very interested in entrepreneurship, and he wanted me to join, try to do a startup with him. That's a really long story, but we met, we became friends, and after a year or 2, we decided, hey, why don't we get Entrepreneur a shot? And that would be I believe the end of senior year of high school, or the beginning of senior year in high school, is when we truly, really started and trying to come up with designs and products and everything.
So tell us a little bit about, you mentioned that not everything you started was successful. And so a lot of entrepreneurs are discouraged by failure. And so you've exhibited some resilience in, continuing the path and trying again. A lot of times it's just you got to keep getting up when you get knocked down. How did you become that resilient, especially at that age? And tell us a little bit about sort of how that has guided your entrepreneurial path.
Honestly, I haven't really thought of it like failure. And how I became so resilient, when I was doing entrepreneurship, I was just so deep in that mind, and I was just so focused on how do I make money. I don't care what I sell. I could sell makeup, or I could sell, kids' toys or dog toys or whatever. At the moment, I really wanted to make money, because I wanted to buy a lot of PC parts, bikes, and other stuff that middle schoolers like. So it really started off with a very naive mindset, and I just never thought that failure was an option. I honestly didn't cross my mind that I would just stop doing this.
So Anthony, you mentioned that you've started a few things and not all of them succeeded. That demonstrates some resilience, which not everybody has. A lot of entrepreneurs get discouraged when things don't work, and they figure, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or I can't make this work, so I'm just not going to try. So, I mean, at an early age, you were doing this and falling down and getting back up. That's impressive. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you viewed the universe in terms of just continuing on and trying again until you do succeed.
So as for resilience, I never really thought of it like that. I never really thought that I have to persevere, because I just genuinely didn't think that, or at least I didn't want to fail at the time. And I've tried a lot of different things, and it was definitely a rough patch. And there were definitely moments where I'm just sitting in my bed, and in the middle of the night, I'm just thinking, what am I doing? Am I even doing everything correctly, or is everything just amount up to nothing? Am I just wasting my time? A lot of different thoughts, especially at a young age when you don't, have that much maturity in yourself. But as for perseverance and resilience, I genuinely thought, or at least didn't want to fail, and that's what honestly kept me pushing. Yeah.
So Anthony, a lot of times entrepreneurs start and their motive is money. I just want to make money however I can. Tell us a little bit about how you started, what your motivation was, and how that has shifted over time, especially after having gone through the Terp Startup Accelerator this past summer.
Well, from the beginning, I just thought, well, I have nothing else better to do. I was in middle school, high school, wasn't that busy. The schoolwork isn't that hard. So I could go outside, play sports, or I could try to start a business in my room. But it came from that naive mindset to going through the Terp Accelerator and doing this project Quello right now. And I realized that my motivation is a lot more deeper than I usually think. And I learned a lot about business, and I kind of pretty much fell in love with business as time goes on, as I work with business. And I guess my most motivating factor right now would, as for personal wise, I really want to be an entrepreneur because I want to leave a mark on this world in my limited time here. Everybody has one life, and for me, I feel like I want to leave a positive impact. I was very fortunate. I was raised in a decent family. I went to good schools, and I never really had to worry about finances and stuff like that. I was given such a great opportunity, and I feel like it'd almost be wasteful to not take advantage of this and try to make something out of it, try to make something that would make my family proud, make my friends proud, and make a lot of everyone else's lives a lot easier.
So we've alluded to this company you have called Quello. Tell us a little bit about Grinzo and that journey, and then how that transformed into this sort of really innovative idea and concept you have in Quello and how they're related.
Yeah, so we actually did start off as a design company. Everything that we have right now, we didn't think of until honestly a few months back. So when we started, we did think about a lot of different things, and we thought how to build a brand. And during the time, many characters such as Hello Kitty and little design characters were really, really popular. So we thought, why not make one ourselves? And that was, I believe, prior to ChatGPT being really good and stuff like that. So there wasn't AI back then. And so we started off as a design company for pretty much a year to a year and a half. I can't quite remember, but yeah, sometime around there. We made many different designs, small comic books, and a lot of different design characters. But slowly as we did it and doing pop-up stores and online stores and doing content, we realized that this was way too saturated, and there wasn't that much room for growth in it, especially with AI being crazy advanced, and they could create a character now within seconds. So we were doing something that just felt like there was a dead end to it. And so we tried to pivot. And it was a really long few months where we just thought out everything, and we were just like, wow, what do we do now? So AI was a new thing, and that honestly opened a lot of doors for us. And we decided to pivot, because our character, his name is Grinzo. And the reason we call him Grinzo is because he always has a grin on his face. So it's there to remind people to smile, to be happy. So we thought, how could we integrate that message into AI or game or hardware integration or something like that? And that's exactly what we started doing. We did a lot of market research, a lot of validation for our idea. We talked to a lot of different people. And right now we came up with an emotional AI companion.
So what does that mean, an emotional AI companion? Tell us a little bit about sort of the problem that you're solving and how this solution addresses that.
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, so the emotional AI companion, those three words are very interesting. It's very new. But our message and our problem right now is that mental health. Gen Z approximately, I think a little less than half reportedly suffer with persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. And those are just the ones who speak up, especially right now with the economy and a lot of pressure on our hands. Especially I, as a college student myself, a lot of my friends, they can't find jobs, and they have a lot of pressure from their parents. Their parents got laid off, and a lot of unfortunate things happen. And mental health has been declining ever since, especially now more than ever. And so we realized that it's not just a big problem, but it's also a really big market, and a really big market that a lot of people don't tap into because of how sensitive it is and how complicated the mental health problem is. As for what an emotional AI companion, the reason we call it that is because we thought to ourselves, what is the biggest causing thing to mental health or mental decline? And that would be statistically proven to be loneliness. I think more than 80%, I'm not exactly sure on my numbers, but people who suffer with severe anxiety and mental health disorders is lack of companionship. And what we mean, and so we realized that companionship was what causes mental health. And so we then move forward to defining what is companionship. Is companionship just me sitting next to a random person sharing a moment, or me sitting next to someone who experienced the same things and understand who I am and know who I'm thinking about? And to realize that companionship is actually a special connection between someone that you have experience with and you shared past experience and they understand you. And so we were thinking to ourselves, how can we combine companionship, artificial intelligence, and make it available and more engaging for the masses? And so we decided we're going to create a game, make it easy to approach, make it fun to approach. And then we're going to create a smartwatch that can detect your heart rate in real time and computing your mood with I think a 98% accuracy as of our models right now. So let's say I walk out of a building or I walk out of my lecture and I'm really anxious, all this information's piling up on me, or I didn't do well on an exam. A lot of different things, but let's say I was really sad, my heart rate was pumping up and I was breathing. My watch would detect it in like 1 to 2 minutes, and then it'll send me a message through our AI prompting, and it'll reach out and try to like spark a real conversation like, hey, why are you this stressed? Hey, is everything okay? And whatnot, to build connection, build relationships. And at least as of now, that is our approach to fixing mental health.
This season, during each episode, we'll have a segment featuring the esteemed AI expert and director of the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Business at the Smith School, Balaji Padmanabhan, that highlights the role of AI on the topics discussed.
Startups and AI. There are so many cool ways these two things are intersecting today. For one, AI is making it so much easier for people to come up with startups, build prototypes from scratch themselves with a simple English sentence. Build me an app that can connect teachers and students who need help after school. Startups are also becoming AI startups. That are, from the last count, if you look at the number of such startups in the world today, I heard somewhere that it's about 100,000 AI startups now. What are these startups doing? One of the things that gets talked about a lot in the AI space is the fact that we are moving towards a future where we are going to be seeing AI factories produce intelligence of specific types, right? AI that can do very, very specific things. And in the podcast, you heard about emotions, AI systems that could talk to humans, that can calm people down, and so on. So we are heading to a world in which these startups and these AI startups are going to be building intelligence in some of these intelligence factories, and a world in which we might have 8 billion humans, we might have 300 million or 300 billion AIs working with humans. This raises interesting questions. What would these AIs be doing, and what are their values? One of the things we talked about earlier was that these AI systems tend to be very good at specific things, but they may not have the values that humans have. A self-driving car might be powered by an algorithm that drives exceptionally well because it's trained with rewards that reward exceptional driving. The same car, if it sees a person at the side of the road that needs help, is not going to slow down and stop like humans would. How do we build intelligence factories that have the values that we want them to have? In addition, when we have a world in which we have 100 billion AIs or whatever, what would humans be doing? Well, one of the things I think we all might be doing in a few years from now is everyone is a pilot. What does that mean, right? Are we all going to be flying planes? Metaphorically, yes. If you look at today's pilots, a lot of them are doing very little flying. These planes are flying by themselves, but the pilots are there to make decisions when it's needed. And there are some times when they do nothing, but there are some times when the decisions they make the difference between life and death. Every single information job is likely going to be morphed into this way. And in that sense, we're all going to have to be users of AI, but we're all going to have to think about how do we become pilots as well.
Anthony, I'm completely excited about your product. What are the next steps for Quello?
Yeah, so that's a question that we get asked the most. And as of right now, what I tell a lot of people is that it's almost ready. Just give us a little bit more time, because right now we're rebranding a little, and we're doing a lot of data collections and focusing a lot on AI safety as well. There's a lot of things we need to make sure that are fine before we actually launch to the masses. But when it's out, you'll definitely hear about us. We'll definitely do our best to market it out in many different ways. But right now, we're just focusing on making the MVP.
Are there ways for people that are curious or really interested in Quello to follow your progress, social media accounts, a website? Tell us a little bit more how people follow your progress.
Yeah, so right now we've started trying to do social media. It's not very, very good yet. It's like a small account that we just post random things about right now. But if they want to follow our progress, we are currently trying to build our website. It's under construction right now. Pretty much it tells you what Quello is, how it works, and our future vision and our mission statement as well.
Tell us about the website. You say it's under construction. Does that mean there's a Quello.com right now, or how would they look that up?
Yeah, so our URL is called neonechous.com. It's actually totally different from not Quello. So we're trying to like do a lot of things, especially like purchasing domains and stuff. Like Quello.com is taken a lot of different things to take in mind, and also we have a backend developer HTML for our website as well. And we're also working on a lot of different designs. Our designers, and I do part-time design as well, we're really drawing like crazy. We're focused so much on the UI right now. So the website, it might take a little, but we'll definitely try to get out as soon as possible.
So what was your inspiration for this? Because it's a really interesting concept. I think now we know of emotional support mechanisms like emotional support animals and whatnot. So what was your inspiration, and how does it differ from that sort of environment?
Yeah, so our inspiration was mainly because we are a group of college students, and we do face a lot of challenges ourselves. We've been through the hardships that right now, life brings us. And we also understand what college students are going through. I have a lot of friends who are also my age that suffer from mental health issues and whatnot. And there's honestly no good solution out there. We did a lot of market research. We tried a lot of different products and apps. They just don't meet the requirements that really cause a change.
Sounds like you learned a lot along the way with the different products that you worked with initially, and then you came to Smith and you went through this program. I'd love it, Mike. Could you share a little bit about the program that he went through over the summer that's at Dingman-Lamone?
Certainly. So we run a program called the TERP Startup Accelerator, and it's an 8-week program where we provide a little bit of funding, enough so that students don't have to work a summer job to make ends meet, gives them opportunity to actually experience entrepreneurship and all the benefits that it provides. So Anthony participated just after his freshman year, which we love, in the accelerator over the course of the summer. And it's intended to take really promising ideas with teams and coach them up and match them with mentors from our community of advisors and coaches, and to really push them towards what we call a minimum viable product, so that they're getting closer to product market fit. These are typically companies that we believe in. Even if we don't necessarily believe in the product, we definitely believe in the founder. This just happens to be both. So it's a really great program. Lots of support from the community. It's not just a Dingman staff sort of thing. We bring all sorts in. So Anthony, about the TERP Startup Accelerator, tell us a little bit about what it taught you, like what kind of illuminating moments you had, and then how do you feel like this has contributed to your professional development along with just your development as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the accelerator program, in my eyes, is much more than accelerator. I feel like accelerator is an understatement. It not only accelerated my knowledge, my learning, and also my experience and business, it also provided us with a lot of different resources and whatnot. What I remember very specifically when I was on stage pitching at Pitch Day, at Demo Day, the last, I think, 1 minute we had to talk about our experience in TERP Startup Accelerator. And I remember very clearly that I said it was the best 8 weeks of my life. And I don't think I was kidding, at least until now. I haven't experienced anything better than Accelerator yet. But during the Accelerator, it really challenged our idea, our business model, and how we approach things. And it taught us one thing, that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail. Because when we're getting like questioned left and right by our mentors, by our counselors, and even by our team members, we were taught to have like a mind that like it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to fail early. I remember there's a saying that's like failing early is winning, failing fast is like winning early, or something like that. But pretty much it gave us a great, really, really great environment with a lot of valuable mentors and mentorship. And the advice that I got throughout this program really accelerated my vision into business and how I view business.
Great. So there's a lot of ways to view failure. I know one popular with us is fail fast, fail forward, fail cheap. Tell us, what you've learned from that mentality and that it's okay to fail, but it's also important to learn from said failures. So tell us a little bit about that.
If I could give an example, there was a time when we did like these huddle groups where we have like a professor, mine was Lottie, and she would like tell us, gather us into a group and ask questions about how our businesses are doing and give advice on that. I remember the first 2 weeks around then, me and my co-founder, we were doing market research. And I can't remember exactly what was it, but Lottie mentioned something very important to us that made me realize that we pretty much been wasting our time this whole time trying to do market research because we were doing it wrong. But the second that happened, the second I got out of that room, I pulled up a doc and I just started writing a bunch of different thoughts and a bunch of different ideas down. And later that night and throughout that week, me and my co-founder, we really sat down and rediscussed and redid a lot of different things. And then the week after we went to Lottie, I asked her, hey, can I meet with you one-on-one, 30 minutes? And then she said, of course she said yes, because how much resources there are. But I pretty much gave her the spiel and she said, yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for and whatnot. So I feel like that was one of my learning experiences.
Yeah, we definitely have a philosophy of brutal honesty paired with unconditional support. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you're usually better for it in the end. So thinking back through this entrepreneurial journey that you've had from middle school all the way through now, a lot of students don't think about this like directly, but how do you feel these experiences have contributed to your professional development overall? And what do you think this gives you any sort of distinct advantages as you move forward in your career?
I feel like the biggest advantage or the biggest thing I learned from entrepreneurship is problem solving. And I don't know if this is the right word, but being unfazed in like challenges. And I feel like as for a professional career, whether it's finding a job or just doing anything professional wise, perseverance and problem solving is a very, very important skill. And I believe that with that skill, pretty much 90% or plus of all your problems or challenges that you're facing, you'll be able to go through or you'll be able to accomplish. So yeah, I feel like problem solving is the biggest skill.
That's interesting because we have a big saying in the atrium of the business school, lead fearlessly, right? And that remaining unfazed, truly a fearless founder. We really admire that.
I was going to say, I'm super excited that you're only a sophomore. This is amazing to me. By the time you're a senior and you're getting ready to graduate, where do you envision Quello at that point in time?
If I could talk about my goals, I would want to have an office maybe in like downtown New York City, Wall Street or something like that. But that's very ambitious. If I'm more realistic, I want just Quello to be available in the market and for us to have a stable income for me to be able to support myself, not even anything extraordinary. I just want to be able to work on Quello and keep working on entrepreneurship in general, and being able to do that without any limitations.
So it sounds like it's a bit of a project of passion for you. So tell us a little bit about that, because like I said earlier, you mentioned early on that you just wanted to make money any way possible. And you'd undergone a distinct transition from that to I'm really passionate about this problem and I'm going to do whatever it takes to solve it. So tell us about that and like the source of the passion, why you're so excited about this project.
I'll just quickly go. Starting from middle school, my first instinct was I want to make money to buy a new bike. And that was literally it. It was a very naive thought. And I wanted to start a business, and my parents gave me the first $500 as funding, as like seed funding. And I did it, and I managed to spread the $500 in like a whole entire year of like failures and whatnot. And throughout that, I realized that it was more than just money to me. It was actually a passion. I really like solving problems. I really like building your brand. I really like trying to achieve something or trying to work for myself at least. And then that love for entrepreneurship combined with our idea for Quello, I realized that it was also just beyond just the love for entrepreneurship. It was also mainly because I genuinely want to leave a positive impact in this world, and I want to be able to sustain a living off of doing that as well.
That's interesting. A lot of people consider entrepreneurs idea people. And the reality is they're expert problem solvers and expert risk mitigators. That's the reality, which I'm sure you've learned, over the course of your journey. So let's assume the worst, and Quello doesn't go the direction that you think it is. We believe it will, but worst happens, it doesn't work out. Where do you envision your career path taking you should that happen?
So I have had this conversation with my family, my friends, and also my co-founder as well. And it ultimately boils down to two paths. One would be start over from the ground up, but this time with a lot more like knowledge, not more experience. The second one would be to get a job, try to start my professional career, but do entrepreneurial on the side. Because what I've learned from talking to a lot of different entrepreneurs, interacting with a lot of people at Smith and a lot of my peers, is that I really want to do entrepreneurship. And there's honestly nothing else in this world that I want to do more than doing that as my professional career.
So what would happen if you were employed by a company where you were empowered and enabled to drive innovation and this sort of activity within a corporation? What would that look like for you?
I know they're big companies. They have a lot of like small entrepreneur things or programs in their own business. They start their own small companies and whatnot. And I realized that maybe that's also an option depending on how big or how much I can contribute to the team. But ultimately, I do want to still try to do something of my own because I want to be able to like look back in time and think like, wow, I did do a lot in my life. And I be really satisfied and grateful for everything. But yeah, if let's say a really big corporation, they come to me and they say, hey, Anthony, I want you to take on a big program for us and like try to help us develop a market of whatnot. And if it aligns with like the entrepreneur spirit and it actually does good for society, I probably wouldn't turn that offer down if it's ideal. Yeah.
So it's interesting because I was a tech entrepreneur for 25 years. And the last place I ever expected to find myself would be at a university, because I was that student that didn't have this kind of entrepreneurial support, dropped out of college several times. And now, I find myself very much entrepreneurial mindset, driven by, innovation and being able to do new and cool things. And even after 25 years of doing that, I was in several different startups that I either founded or co-founded. But it's like I really found my spot in higher ed of all places. But it's because what I just asked about, they allow me to have the autonomy to do innovative things, and they expect me to challenge the status quo and imagine new paths, and that's terribly exciting, right? And incredibly fulfilling. So you never know where the path will lead, right? But I commend you on sort of your mentality and how you look at things, and your humility. Some entrepreneurs are overconfident, and I think you have a really good grounding.
Thank you so much.
And a great vision. I love the fact that you said, you want an office in New York, right? Because one thing I think everybody can imagine in their lifetimes is if your mind can conceive something and believe it, you can actually achieve it. And I think here at the Robert H. Smith School of Business and in the Dingman-Lamone Center, we're actually fostering that thought process and empowering our students to be able to achieve great things. And so I just want to thank you both really for coming today. This was amazing. I can't wait to see what happens with Quello and where your audience goes, right? Your market is probably limitless, not only with college students, but plenty of adults, right? And to your point, here at the Smith School, the dean allows all of us to be entrepreneurial, which is why we now have a career boutique here, the wellness center, and this very podcast. So thank you both for coming today. And until next time, we'll see you on Smith's Got Talent. To learn more about how to hire our students that can innovate in your business, please email us at smithocs-ae@umd.edu. Again, that's SMITHOCS-AE@umd.edu.